I believe we're live. Okay. I think in the past we've had some sort of intro music or things like that. But in any event, here we are. Welcome, everybody. I don't know if my moderator can hear me, but is there a way for us to? There we go. Thank you. Read my mind. A little bit bigger on the slides, a little bit less of my face, but I'm happy to see everybody here today. I will be able to field your questions in the comments. So feel free to drop them in over the course of the presentation today. What we're going to do today, we're going to go through a few slides, but then I think the more important and valuable part of this is that we're actually going to build an MBA resume together. And we're going to go into specific bullet points and what things look like and how they either should be or can be formatted. And we'll walk through all of that step by step. I think inevitably, I guess, we need to do a little bit of upfront just framing of who we are, where the resume fits into things, and some overarching kind of advice, formatting, design choices, things like that. So we'll go through a few slides, and then most of this, I hope, is going to take place, on the screen, in a page, in a resume. I've got basically a blank page ready to go, and we're gonna update that together and talk through all manner of resume considerations, MBA resume considerations that you and we can think of. So look forward to your questions and look forward to getting this started. My name is Greg Guglielmo. I'm the founder of Avanti Prep. We are a boutique MBA admissions consulting firm. We were founded in 2017 and have partnered with GMAT Club ever since. We have, at this point, worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients around the world. I think at last count, it was over 30 countries, over 50 different programs. A lot of that in this industry, of course, skews toward the highest ranked programs. But we have experience, very much across the board. Just a little bit more about us. We are and are proud to have been featured on at least one of Poets and Quant's top consulting lists every year since 2020. If you go through and look up reviews, there's a bullet about myself on the page. Among the most reviewed admissions consultants globally, you could go look at numbers. I think there's 600 plus consultants in the Poets and Quants directory and 400 plus consultants in the GMAT Club directory. I have among the most reviews there. I have a question here about going full screen on the presentation. Can you guys comment? Is it too small? If it's too small, I will go full screen. Otherwise, there are some things in here I tend to like to highlight and underline and so forth. And if we go full screen, then you lose me. It gets a little weird within the system. But if there's enough protest in the comments, I'll go full screen. Anyway, who else is on our team? So that's me. I am fortunate to be one of the most reviewed admissions consultants globally. We want you to go out there and read our reviews. Who else is on our team? We have Morgan Bernstein. She's the former head of full-time MBA admissions at Berkeley Haas. We think that that's pretty unique. A lot of firms out there have people who, were former AdCom, and that just means they spent maybe a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years, sometimes in a junior role as an AdCom. Morgan was the head of MBA admissions. She worked at Haas for 12 years. She was on the admissions team for 9 or 10, and she was the head of admissions for 4 years. So that's a pretty unique feature. We have other team members as well. In particular, Sarah Rothschild. She's a PhD in English language and literature, a professor. She's taught writing. She's taught business writing. She's taught storytelling type writing for 20 or 30 years. She's one of our storytelling experts. I have the three, myself, Morgan, Sarah listed up here on the page. We have some other team members as well. We are a very high touch firm. Again, please read our reviews. They are really detailed. They are really transparent. We are known, and you will see themes cultivated in there related to our depth, our quality, our commitment, the level to which we truly personally invest in you. We know you're spending a lot of money on this, and we are often shocked and disappointed to hear when people don't get their money's worth, perhaps elsewhere in the marketplace. We believe that, we understand and appreciate, excuse me, that people are coming to us, spending real money, making a real investment. This has a huge impact on your future, where you get into school, what jobs that leads to, what countries that might lead you to living in. It is a huge inflection point in your life and career. And we believe that, our investment our investment in you is commensurate with the investment you make in us. On the topic of that investment, we do offer, I know I talked about higher quality. I believe we offer higher quality. Our clients believe we offer higher quality. We have a lot of reviews on our website from a few dozen individuals we have worked with over the years, who previously and unsuccessfully worked with other firms or local firms trying to save some money. Things didn't work out. They came to us. They had a very different experience. They had a very different result. You can check out our website, avantiprep.com, and our testimonials page. It gives a whole variety of different subsets of testimonials there. We offer this higher quality at what I think could more objectively be described as a lower rate. That lower rate compared to other, Western firms, US firms, European firms, certain Asian firms, you can run, and we would really honestly encourage people to go and read reviews, read them in detail, and then run a benchmarking analysis, compare rates against peer firms. Again, there can be geographic price differences. I get that. But if you compare, I think, apples to apples in terms of geography, in terms of number of reviews and things like that, we will come out significantly ahead. On average, so there are other, this is the last comment I'll make on this, we'll go into the resume. In Poets and Quants directory, there are only a couple of dozen consultants who have more than 85 lifetime reviews. I'm fortunate to be one of them. The average rate for the other people in that 2 dozen or so is $495 per hour. Most clients I work with pay $295 per hour. I know that's still a high number, but the average for my peer group, if you want to call it that, the other individuals with 85 plus lifetime reviews who have been doing this full time for a long time, $495 an hour. Most clients I work with, $295 per hour. That rate is accessible when you hit a certain price tier. A certain number of hours. There are different rates for different numbers of hours, but that's most individuals I work with. It's $200 an hour less. That's 40% less. And we are running a promotion on top of that, 10% off all services through for the next 2 weeks. You sign up by October 25th. You could use them anytime within a year. So enough on that. You all came here for resume work, not for a commercial about Avanti Prep. Where does this all fit in? Let's actually look. We could look at this a couple of ways. Okay, all the different things we do are, of course, all the different things that are in an MBA application process. This is a list of all different types of things you'll encounter and interact with and need to work on over the course of the next few months if you're applying in round 2. And these are all, therefore, all the different services that we provide. When people sign up for hourly services arrangements, we mix and match and piece these things together. Of course, essays is a huge one because you have to do it, multiple essays for multiple different schools. Yes, they become scalable. Excuse me. Yes, they become scalable and adaptable between different schools, but there is enough variation in essay topics, essay questions, essay specificity, school specificity. Essays is, a big part of this. But here today, we're going to focus on resume. I call it resume landscaping. How should we lay out the resume? What structure best suits you given your experiences? And then resume reviews. This is another visual on where this all fits in. All right, the resume. What is it? It's the front page of your candidacy. There's different studies you'll see over the years of like, what percentage what influence does the resume have? What impact does the resume have? You'll see studies that say, oh, it has 20% importance. I think it's hard to quantify, but it is a front page, single page snapshot of who you are, what you've done, your leadership, your skills, your impact. So we want to be extremely thoughtful about what goes into the resume. When we work with clients, we wrestle with, and we would encourage, whether you're doing this on your own or what have you, wrestle with every single choice and every single bullet point in the resume. Section-wise, and again, we're going to pull this up and kind of build this together. Section-wise, we support, and there's some variation to this, we generally support 4 sections: experience, and then involvement or leadership or community, then education, and then additional. That can vary a little bit. Sometimes you'll hear people support a 3-section approach. That's fine too. We like, and there's a kind of a rationale behind it, but we like to have this involvement section on there. Again, it could alternately be titled leadership or community. But why? It changes the front page. There are a couple of reasons why. It changes the front page dynamic of the resume, the front page of you, away from somebody who is purely professional or just professional. It gives this multidimensional, immediate imprint or immediate feeling as to who you are. It gives you an opportunity to call out very immediately, kind of from the jump on this cover page of you, more of the leadership and impact that you've had, let's say, outside the office. In this case, another reason is there are a couple of schools out there who don't even give you a place any longer in the application to list your involvement. MIT Sloan, Michigan Ross, others over the years have sort of wound this back. As there's more and more of a movement toward lean applications, you see some of that fall off. So if it's in those cases, if it's not on the resume, it didn't happen. Now, MIT has a format where they actually want you to use 3 sections, so the involvement goes in the additional. We can cover a little more of that later. You want to show your dates, show locations, show promotions. Within each section, everything should be in reverse chronological order, so the most recent at the top. Do not overwhelm the reader with technical jargon. Don't overcrowd the content. Use margins, use white spaces. One of the biggest, I'll call it an orange flag, we see when we receive first drafts of resumes is people have text that comes just to the edge on the top, at the bottom, and the left and the right. I think that's an immediate indicator that people didn't kind of get it. It looks unprofessional. It looks like you couldn't synthesize everything down, or people have no space between different jobs or different roles or different sections. We'll take a look at how that goes. Font type, font size. I mean, I think we're still in a world where Times New Roman or Arial are your best bets. Sizes, I would use 10 as my absolute minimum, no lower than 10. MIT Sloan actually requires or asks for 10. I think 10 is a little bit small, especially for Times New Roman. If I'm in Times New Roman, I try to be in the 10.5, 11 area. These are going to be 1-page resumes with rare exception. If they're sometimes for like an executive MBA program, they might allow up to 2 pages. Certain part-time programs might be a little less strict about it, but you should be able, by and large, the folks out there watching this video are either going to be, in most cases, required to submit a 1-page resume, or you should absolutely be able, if you have, 3 to 8 years of professional experience, this should all be on 1 page. The contemporary mind, the AdCom readers, they go through tons and tons and tons of pages and essays and text. Less is more in that regard. We'll talk about margins. We'll see how those manifest on the page. I don't think you need to go all the way up to full 1-inch margins. My rule of thumb for left and right is like probably no less than 0.6 inches. The top where your name is, you could sometimes go a little bit lower than that because it doesn't look as compressed because it's just your name at the top. 1 or 2 line bullets. I I'm not a big fan of 3-line bullets. I think that's getting a little bit excessive. I don't think readers have the mental patience, in this kind of social media world where everything's quick and everything's easily digestible, to really, really sit there and like read through it. If your bullets are too long, if your text is too wide, if there's no space on the page, if there's nowhere for the eye to breathe, for the reader to breathe, or to kind of digest your information in chunks, then they're going to gloss over it and it's going to be lost. We want to use the present tense for ongoing verbs and the past tense for closed actions. Most resumes are therefore going to be in the past tense, except for maybe, something you're currently working on in your current job, or or an ongoing project. Here's where we're going to get into the content a little bit more. Feel free to, take a screenshot. I'll have these up on a separate page as well, and we'll kind of toggle between these and what they look like, how they manifest on a real page. I am a big proponent of using one-line company description. So name of your company and then one italicized line below that says what your company does. I say with rare exception, sometimes your company, it's so obvious what your company does, a huge consulting firm, a huge financial organization. Even in those cases, I think you could potentially utilize a line that describes what your group is or does. So it's not out of the question. In those cases, you don't always need it. But for many people, especially if you work at a company that is not, where it's not so obviously known what that company does, we want to get a one-line description on there. We'll talk, we almost don't need to go through this because we're gonna go through it live. So yeah, we'll go through each of these in greater detail and provide examples of them. Just very quickly here, start bullets with action verbs. We've got a list. What is the distinct value, purpose, or ethos of each bullet? We've got a list there as well. We'll pull these back up again. But each bullet on your resume, for the most part, every kind of content bullet, every bullet related to what you've done at your job should start with an action verb. Here is a list. Here are some examples of action verbs. Culled from, what did I do? I went through many of the resumes we've worked on recently with candidates. I've kind of clustered these a little bit. If you look closely, these are more leadership-y action verbs. To an extent, these are as well, albeit with a little bit of a different vibe to them. This cluster is more related to collaboration in some form, advisory, partnership, coordination. This group is related to initiating, founding, creating. These to analyzing, assessing, evaluating, modeling. So you could get the idea of some of these kind of genres on here, or categories. This is more of a mix. These are some kind of, if you want to start a bullet with impact verbs, we'll talk about the what, how, impact formula that we should permeate every single bullet. What did you do? How did you do it? What was the impact? There are some cases where you could put the impact at the front of the bullet, and that's where these ones in green might come in handy to start. So we're going to talk about, we talked about the one-line company description. We are going to talk about what I mean by a first bullet point, but I'm a big proponent of a first bullet point that makes it super clear what you do. We've never met before. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your title means or what your company does. Give me a bullet point, a first bullet point for each role that makes it super clear to a stranger what you do. We'll pull up some examples of that. And the rest of the bullets can focus on specific projects, accomplishments, and impact. We'll talk about bullet point structure. If you work in investment banking or consulting, there are ways to take a selected project or selected deal approach to structuring your resume. We just talked about the action verbs. Be thoughtful and strategic about what you highlight. A good example here we encounter, and I know many of you out there might work in engineering, and your natural resume, or your resume if you were applying for a job internally, is going to orient more around technical technical bullets. Well, here we're applying to MBA programs, to business programs. They're looking for a whole host of other different types of skills. So we want to be thoughtful and strategic about what you highlight. We'll pull up a great example of how we kind of went from point A to point B. On that, we want to think about what the distinct value, purpose, or ethos of each bullet is. What do I mean by that? Every bullet, this might be a little bit small. I like for people to, when every bullet you're crafting, run it through this list. This is a menu. It's not comprehensive. It's not exhaustive, but it's a list of MBA relevant quality, skills, and themes. Every time you both in choosing your bullets and then in shaping your bullets or editing your bullets, think about which of these qualities, skills, themes, or strengths they highlight. It's not just going to be one of them. It's often going to be a few of them or a cluster of them. So again, using that engineer example, if your natural 5 or 6 bullet points were going to be all super technical, well, that's not going to help you too much. I think it'll actually turn the reader off and make you feel disjointed or removed from the MBA goal or the business goal that you're projecting in your applications and in your post-MBA career goals. We want to highlight and make sure that between the sets of bullet points on your resume, you've cultivated and are articulating little stories, little examples, projects, skills, how you did things that resonate with all the different things on this page, whether it's leadership or management or conflict management, building consensus, listening, trust building, relationship building, presenting, communication. You can see all of them on there. Innovation, intellectual curiosity, continuous improvement, going above and beyond. So we'll come back and look at examples of that as well. I mentioned this a moment ago, but each bullet is a mini story. You're going to have essays out there that Kellogg's first essay, they changed it a little bit this year, but it's always oriented around like a single example, 450 words. Think of your resume bullets for your professional jobs as two-line versions of that. Each bullet is a mini story. It's going to have a situation, an action, and a result, or a what, a how, and an impact. You're not always going to have all those parts. It's not going to fit every time, but have that framework in your head. What did I do? How did I do it? What was the impact for every single bullet on the resume? You want to quantify that impact. You want to unpack the value of that how and quantify the impact where you can, qualify it where you can't. We'll talk about what that means. All right, let me switch over. Okay, so this is a essentially blank resume. We're gonna get to work on this in the spirit of what I just described. Let me zoom in a little bit. I am in Word here. Obviously, you could do this in Google Docs, Canva. I've seen people use a little bit more of late. All right, just peeking at a couple of questions here. Let's see if we can go even a little further. Okay. All right. So my name is at the top. That's obviously just a stand-in. I mean, right off the bat here, observations. I'm a proponent of all caps in your name at the top of the page. I think it makes it stand out a little bit more, projects some kind of psychological strength beneath it. You'll see though that it's not too big, right? It's not 22 in font. It's somewhere around 16. You could tinker with that. I like to be able to control the space everywhere on the resume. And by that, I mean, be able to control the font size. So I might find that later on, I don't need this whole big space here. It's a 10.5. I could take that down, I don't know, to a 4 or a 6. Other things, just kind of as we work our way down. If you're a doctor, you can certainly put MD or, M period, D period up here. If you are a CFA, I would get that up here as well. Those are probably the two most obvious acronyms that could go at the top like that. Again, they're going to see both of those things elsewhere in your application. I'm going to zoom in even a little bit more. They're going to see those things elsewhere in your application if you're a medical doctor, if you're a CFA, but branding, psychology, marketing, this is, again, a one-page snapshot of you. What an interesting way to kind of lead. If you're a medical doctor, make sure MD's up there. They know from the jump that you're a doctor. If you're a CFA. Now, other things like, I don't know, if you are a chartered accountant in India, if you are a CPA, I personally don't think I would put those at the top. I would let those come later on. This is branding. Those are great credentials and they speak to some of your analytical underpinning. But sometimes they can over-brand you as, an accountant. And here you're trying to most likely project beyond that in the business around. So valuable skills, but I don't necessarily think I would it's a judgment call. I would probably let those come, further down the resume. Address and stuff over here. I think at this point in the MBA space, it's optional whether you want to put, 120, oops. So this would be centered. Ooh, boy. Obviously, I'm making up the address here. You would put phone number. This is a US format for phone number, and you would put, your email address. Many do it. It's probably more standard to do it. Certainly on a professional resume, you'd want to get this information on there. They need to have your contact information on this single page. Increasingly in the MBA application space, people are omitting this line. I would say it's something like 50-50 now amongst individuals we work with, because the MBA program has all that information, in the same kind of application package. So I think your call on that stuff. Again, you can control all of the spacing. Everything is a choice on here. In fact, these defaulted to long dashes. There are a lot of times up here where I'll go short dash and then one space on each side. Short dash and one space on one extra space on each side. And you just want to be consistent with that. I mentioned, some of the sections a moment ago. Experience. What would we default to? What would Greg, default to? My first place I'd look is to do experience and then community, education, and additional. Make sure your lines are horizontal, make sure your font sizes match, etc. Experience. This could be experience or it could be professional. Community could be community. Well, you say, okay, well, what if, some of my leadership stuff is not just from the community? You have this plenty of times we call this leadership or we call this involvement. So those are the sections. You will hear some people say, and there are times where I would say, hey, let's put education at the top. This is a little bit of maybe not quite 50-50, but you'll hear different, I think, legitimate opinions on this. Some people want education. Some advisors you speak with or consultants who have done this for a while, they'll say they prefer education at the top. MIT Sloan, they have very prescribed sectioning if you're applying there. They want education at the top. They want 3 sections, education at the top, then experience, then additional. What do we do with clients? We just fold the involvement down into the additional when the time comes for MIT Sloan. I personally think that if you're applying to full-time MBA programs, you probably graduated 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 years ago. Why should education still be at the top? The professional is more recent. you are, I think, more defined by what you've done in your work since then. And that's why we put professional at the top. But if somebody went to a prestigious, military academy in the US, West Point, Naval Academy, or a really, really prestigious undergraduate university, in those cases, we might bring education back up to the top. So you could see we have a default, but there's kind of constant consideration and customization occurring between all those. I talked, and we could scroll back down here for reference. These are all the things we talked about in the slides. Using one-line company descriptions, first bullet point. So we're going to now implement some of these things. A one-liner about the company, just some examples, right? I'm pasting this in, by the way, from other resumes. I've anonymized a lot of this stuff. You're going to see a ton of blanks on here. It's not because that's what was actually on the resume. These are just stand-ins. I've taken, some of the representative or identifying information out of these. And because I'm pasting them in, the font's going to look a little bit different. Obviously, these should all be the same font. Choices up here. Some of you might look at this already and say, well, wait a second. He's got the location over there. That's also a choice. You could bring the location over to the right and then move your dates down to go next to, whatever you were saying, finance associate, and then bring the dates over here. But for now, let's just assume this. I was talking about these one-liners for company descriptions. Now, something simple like this. This one happens to be publicly traded. So we've included its stock ticker. I've made it up. It's ABC in this case, but you would, of course, put the real stock ticker. You could put, the annual revenue. You could put number of employees if that's indicative. You don't have to do all of this. You don't even in some cases want to do all of this every single time, but you get the idea. Get a one-liner on there about the company. Here's some other examples. Again, I've Swiss cheesed them a little bit. And of course, your font should match. Oh, wait, 11. And keep them to one line. Look, I just changed the font size on this one. And I call this a hanging Chad. It took me down by one word onto the next line. I don't want that. Okay, so here I'm just editing blanks. But I would edit that line of text so that the actual final product stayed neatly and cleanly on one line. My first role, my job, we'll call it, finance associate or engineer 2, or you name it. Take this back to Times New Roman. Let's say I was in that job. Let's say I was in that role from Jan of 2022 to present. Another note here, as I just saw this click through, look at the direction. If you are going to use apostrophes on years, look at the direction of that apostrophe. That is the correct direction. It briefly faced as I was typing it. There you go. So that is incorrect. I probably have to zoom in a little bit more to show you. Okay, that's the incorrect direction for an apostrophe. If you're using that form or that format for years, that is the correct version. And let's just pretend. Let's pretend I've been in the finance associate role from Jan 22 to present. I'll call it Jan 23 to present. But I joined the company in 2021. Okay, now I might bring my master years up here. Now I'm going to have my promotion shown. And let's just say I was in this from, July of 2021 to December of 2022. Again, you will see formats, you will encounter formats. They are all legitimate where, the years are on the left side of the page in their own column. The Harvard, the HBS format kind of famously utilizes that. What I use is actually closest to the Booth format of all things. There's no wrong. Well, there are things where we would kind of say, "Ooh, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look good." But for things like this, we will even kind of vary and stray depending on, depending on the nature of where people worked and what the years were. Here, I'm kind of just defaulting to one option. Look, that dash got big when I was spacing around. We want to make sure you could use long dashes or short dashes, but they should be consistent. And you should, make sure that you are right aligned. Whatever text is on the right side of that page, you want to make sure you're right aligned. I have separate entries here for, here just using stand-in, that the person was an analyst first and then they got promoted to associate. This is an important observation or an important point. Schools want to see your forward progression. They want to see the increase in impact and responsibilities that you've had. When we receive resumes for free consultations, I will often look at them, and sometimes I won't be sure. I'll have to ask the person, did you get promoted? Were you promoted there? Did your role change? Did your title change? Or sometimes they'll have all of their roles clustered together. They'll say, I was a finance associate for these dates, and then I was a finance analyst for these dates. And then they'll just have a stream of bullets beneath them. In most cases, that is suboptimal. In most cases, if I saw these clustered together, I would say, let's break them out and have some bullets for each of these roles, because I want to see, I want to create a more immediate and obvious resume landscaping or structure. So somebody looks at your resume, they can instantly tell that you were promoted, that you projected forward. Schools are very interested in that. Yes, it's going to show up in your application. Yes, it's going to show up elsewhere. We want to make sure that it is immediately digested here. And the other reason is that the sub bullets that exist within each of these categories are now going to give you the ability to speak to different of those qualities, skills, strengths, and themes. Before we get into some of those sub bullets, I talked about a first bullet point. Consider a first bullet point that makes it super clear what you do. Consider this, we don't know anything about you or what you do, and you are telling us in 1 or 2 lines bullet. Think of it like you're trying to tell a stranger what you do in ways that they will intuitively understand. Again, I'll reference the HBS, the kind of famous or semi-famous HBS resume format. They have a dedicated line for this. And in the HBS format, they actually don't even use a physical bullet on that line. It's left aligned, and it's just 1 or 2 lines to open the sequence, to open that role, to acclimate the reader in very clear terms with what you did in that role. Some examples. This is a financy one to just keep with, the finance associate theme we have here. Again, apologies, it's coming in Arial because I pasted it. That's where I pasted it from. But it's anonymized. It's somebody who worked in, as a finance associate at a company. We're not into specific projects, accomplishments, and stories just yet. We're acclimating the reader. This is a first bullet point. Now I, as the reader, have an immediate understanding of what that person did in that job. There's still value points and value nuggets and value nodes intentionally designed into this. They're in fact that they led the day-to-day execution of these things. They probably had a senior manager or a managing director or somebody who was their boss, but the day-to-day execution is so often piloted in one of these finance roles or investment banking or M&A, corp dev. if you're the associate a few years out of undergrad, you're driving a lot of the day-to-day of that. So take advantage of that. Talk about how you led it. Let that be the immediate or first action verb that the reader encounters. You can qualify it by saying that you led the day-to-day execution. Okay, I wasn't leading the whole thing, my boss was, but I was leading the day-to-day execution. We know here now the numbers. Clarity and value are two words I'll constantly say in resumes. Be clear and extract the value. Leading day-to-day execution, that's value and clarity, I guess. 2 to 4 M&A projects at a time, that's clarity. Now I know, I'm encountering you. I don't know what you do. I don't know your company. And now I get it. Oh, okay. I can picture you almost at your job or at your desk. Now I know the deal size. You've acclimated me with that as well. In here, the person just kind of spelled out very briefly some of the subtasks that exist, some of the type of analyses or coordination or partnership or collaboration that went into this. And here they mentioned briefly, so yes, it's a first bullet point, but we are capturing value, clarity and value. Here they're mentioning, look, this spans 6 continents and all 4 of the firm's business units. The 6 continents piece is creating this idea of international activity. Let's see if we have any other. So here's somebody from consulting, same idea. Okay, we kind of know what consultants do, management consultants, strategy consultants, but there are a lot of different types of consultants. And people who work in consulting firms cover a lot of different industries, or they focus functionally on different parts of the value chain, some strategy, others more implementation. So here, I'm not suggesting put both of these on. It would just be one or the other, but this would be Times New Roman. Okay. This person from consulting, so this would be like a replacement for this, and this person would be a consulting associate, but you get the idea. Advise industry and industry. These are stand-ins. The person obviously had their real industries written in there. Consumer packaged good clients, retail clients, real estate clients, insurance clients, whoever the clients are, put that advise those type of clients in. Well, this person advised them in the US and the UK. Let's get both of those countries in there. Now we know you have international experience. On what? This is what they advised them on. And this particular person, the consulting firm they worked at, they didn't just stop at advisory. They actually then led international teams to implement the recommendations they had previously made to the company, to company management. So these are first bullet points. Again, now I know, I've never met you before, and now I know what you do. And every other bullet point can focus on accomplishments, projects, accomplishments, and impact. Let's just jump to this real quick. Consider your bullet point structure. There are a variety of different bullet point structures you can adopt, ranging from the traditional linear bullet point structure. That's going to be the most common, to the project-based bullet point structure. This is something for people who work in investment banking or consulting or any other project-oriented role to consider. We will sometimes, by the way, do this for individuals who want to go into consulting. So you sort of create the resume for the job you want. If your previous job was still pretty project-based, we could put together a consulting style resume, even though you haven't worked in consulting yet. We sort of have to see what examples and ammunition and projects you have. What does that actually look like? So for those, we'll just keep with that consulting person that I've got up here. So just, pretend all of this is consulting. This is their, so let's just say they were a strategy associate. This is what I mean by project-based bullet points. You call out select project experience. You'll sometimes see it as selected project experience. You'll sometimes see select deal experience. If it's investment banking, you probably go more, select client experience. But the idea is that you're calling out specifics that you've done. Now, what have they done here? They've got an italicized strip, By the way, if you don't like italics because you just used italics up here, you can, we could think about this in bold or in another type of format. Oops. But let's just not worry about that kind of font stuff right now. What do they have? They have a one-line strip that says what the project was. I was a consultant. As a consultant for X number of years, you got assigned to a few cases or clients or engagements per year. This is a one-line strip summary of what one of those big and resume-worthy cases were. A lot of times you might have worked on 12 of these things and you might put 4 on your resume. You're going to choose the 4 that were most impactful, where you played the most interesting roles, where maybe you played the most diverse roles, so that in aggregate between them, it's not 4 of the same thing. Here's one example, though. This person worked on a high-profile IPO recommendation, and they helped execute the IPO afterward for a global, whatever industry this was. It was one of the largest IPOs of the year. So a little fun fact or value fact thrown in here. It was the second largest software IPO of 2021 or whatever the year was. Here's a 2-line bullet now about what the person did in that role. We talked about the what, how, impact formula. There are elements of that here. We'll take a deeper dive into that in a moment. But just in terms of this formatting, what would you do next now? You picked your other 2 deals that you want to have on here. You would format them in sort of the same way. Looks a little busy with all the blanks and all kind of like the filler text that I have on here, and also because it's the same language over and over. I think if you were to zoom out and clean these up and actually update them, it would look a little cleaner. We could also start getting into sometimes you zoom out, you pull out, and you could start to decide on how to space these things. Okay, well, maybe I want a little bit of space right here before the role. You don't always need that. You could also control the size of that space. I would not usually put a space there unless the person, let's say they were like a strategy analyst first and they got promoted. Maybe you look at it and you say, you know what, three looks like a lot. And it was really 2 projects that were most, most memorable, most impactful for me when I was there. We could, kill that, just go with 2 here. You'd have to decide, would you want to repeat this format if you had a previous role as a strategy analyst? I mentioned, in most cases, I would separate, if you were promoted, I would separate those into separate roles. This is where you get into resume landscaping and choices. But the exception to that would be if the 2 roles that you had were like so similar. What can I do then? Okay, well, if the 2 roles I've had were really similar, I could bring this over. And what do I have? July of 21 to December of 22. My role. And then in those cases, I don't need, now I might, in this case, end up with another line here. And I might say that I was promoted from, even though it's obvious, if there were reasons why you were promoted, or if you were promoted ahead of others, if you were promoted after 12 months and the typical, you were promoted after 18 months and the typical is 36 months for that, I would get that on the resume. That's something your recommender should also talk about as well. Or if there was, some other big things that you did, you could think of these bullets. This is a traditional first bullet, but then these bullets would be sort of catch-all between the roles before you then transition into specific projects. Again, if this feels too crowded, play around with a little bit of space. That's why I like to be able to control the font size of each and every space on the resume. We talked about these action verbs before. Hopefully this is a helpful chart. You could take those and run with them. I think as we continue to populate this resume, you'll see more and more of these fill in. Okay. We want to focus on the rest of these bullets now. Projects, accomplishments, and impact. Be thoughtful and strategic about what you highlight. Consider the distinct value, purpose, or ethos of each bullet. Let's go back to this big old list here. This is a menu of skills and themes and strengths. A menu or a list, and it keeps running longer and longer, of MBA relevant themes. So I want to filter my bullet points and the things I choose to focus on, the little stories I choose to focus on in here. I want to filter them through this lens. What does each bullet point, what is the purpose of that bullet point being on the resume? What skills or accomplishments or strengths or qualities does it highlight about me? So let's just say, let's ditch our consulting example for a second and take somebody who came from a software engineering background. And when we first encountered them, they had something like, I've anonymized this, I've sort of tailored it to the presentation, but okay, let's say they were a software engineer. I do, by the way, you can see me sort of doing it as I go along. I'm a fan of fully left of line bullets. So a clean, along the left side of the text here. I don't personally like indented bullet points, but to each their own on that. It's not a big deal either way. This is what we inherited. This is what the client's first draft, again, anonymized and changed and edited for purposes of this presentation. But this is roughly what that person's first draft of bullets looked like. Not a strategy person, but we could say, a software engineer. If you look at those, little thing too, I am not a fan of periods on bullets. No one's gonna, beat you up if you have them, but I like to be period free. I think the periods create a closed feeling and a certain staccato to the reading of the resume, whereas I think we want to kind of release, it's such a subconscious thing, but we want to keep the reader open and moving and flowing through the resume. So, okay, these were, again, if anyone's scanning through this are the originally inherited bullet points before pre-revision. Some things to observe. The biggest thing to observe here is that these are all very technical. This person came from the software background. Maybe these bullet points worked a little bit better internally for them at their job, but here, all kind of technical. Software, other tools. So we want to take at a macro level, a recalibration or a reassessment of that. We need to get to know, in order to do that, you working on your own really need to think about all the different experiences you've had at your job. And we, in working with you, would really need to understand all of the different things you've done and probably be on a call working through this together or thinking through this together to understand all of the new, tell me more about this project. Well, you say you built support for a new device. Tell me more about building that support, because building that support is going to involve trust building and communication and presentation and partnership of some variety. That's a distinct skill. That's a skill where if we focus more on that, we're going to step away from this overly technical and kind of unclear feelings that we have. So how do we take this and diversify it, strengthen it, apply some of the paradigms that we've talked about, clarity and value, the what, how, impact formula, the unique ethos of each bullet. What's the reason or purpose that that bullet's on the resume? So this is roughly where we ended up. A little hard to follow again because I have to anonymize and stuff in here. Okay. So we went from a situation, so you could even just compare this first bullet to the new first bullet. Research, design, and implement software that powers customer experience. This is the before, and this is the after. First observation, we dropped the verb research. I mean, maybe there is research involved in this. Maybe research could go somewhere else. Maybe you're a great researcher, but as a first bullet headline, the first verb that the reader of this resume is encountering, for an MBA resume, I don't want it to be research. Design and implement, the person actually had them already in there. We just deleted research and led with that. Design and implement are stronger verbs than research. Again, it's not that research can't have a home on a resume. I just don't think I want it as the first word or the first brand or feeling that the reader encounters. We mentioned the type of software in this case. It wasn't, I think you have to be careful not to go too technical with that, but in this case, it wasn't. We were able to keep this. I liked this, powers customer experiences, and enables what? This particular software enabled very, very novel and relatable customer-facing things. So now we're being more clear, and we are we're hitting innovation, relatability with that. We're being more specific for X number of stores, and we added at the back end how much revenue. You're impacting 20 different stores. Well, what's the aggregate revenue? And you're facilitating all of X at that store. What revenue does that facilitate? Facilitate's a very intentional verb there too. I mean, you're not directly increasing revenue. That would be a little bit hard to trace. If you could, then great. If you helped increase revenue from X to Y, here we were better off using kind of that aggregate revenue. And now the reader, so these are subtle. This is the first bullet for this person. It is the headline. It's the, I don't know what you do or who you are. Now help me understand that. And I know it's hard to totally digest this because I've got so many things pulled out of here to anonymize the bullet. But now we know we have a stronger front end. We know what type of software it is. We know exactly what it enables in these stores. And we know the number of stores, the type of stores. These are relatable stores in this example, ones that people would know and be familiar with, and probably go to themselves, and how much revenue that facilitates. Now, if you look at the rest of these bullet points, so we went up here from bullet points that are largely really all except maybe the last one. This person had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points that were technical. Okay, well, I'm a software engineer. Aren't these going to be inherently technical? To a degree, yes. But if we really wage constructive war on these bullet points, we're going to be able to disentangle and improve the delivery of diversify and improve the delivery of these bullet points. So now the person has, if you look at these 5 in aggregate, okay, we have a first bullet point that kind of overarchingly and still specifically and impactfully acclimates the reader with what this person does. We then have 4 subsequent bullet points. One is, it's still technical-ish, but it's about launching something really innovative. Launched. Okay, very strong initiation verb. We look at our action verb list. Launched is powerful. It's an artificial intelligence-based solution. It's novel. We included, this is just a stand-in, what the purpose of that was. But here's the how. How did they do it? They coordinated between this team and that team. This is the what, if you look closely, that what, how, impact formula. This is the what, this is the how, and this is the impact. This is the what, this is the how, and this is the impact. So yes, it's still a technical project that underpins this, but we have presented it in a way that highlights the applicant's leadership and innovation. The how highlights their cross-functional collaboration. And then we've got a very clear impact, a very clear and quantified impact in here as well. So we've improved both from a macro perspective. We look across these bullets, we've got more diversity. And then within each of these bullets, we've got a stronger delivery. The what, how, impact formula. You could also call it like a situation, action, result type thing. You know, is that the situation? Is this the action or actions? And is this the result? I want you to think about that for every single bullet point. I know that sounds tedious, right? It's like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to do this. But you are telling a mini story. You are telling a 2-line story with every single one of these bullet points. It's like you're crafting like the best tweets in the world, like down to that very specific size. Here, my governing principle would be no longer than 2 lines. So, you know, fit. Don't go too small. Don't shrink your font to 9 to fit it to 2 lines. 10 is your minimum. Maybe even ideally 10.5 or 11. But that's the what, how, impact formula. Let's keep going with this example. This is another technical type bullet, but again, delivered in a stronger way. Let's just skip to the next 2. This one is all now about communications. And this one, let's give that green. This one's all about communications. This one is all about personnel management and mentorship, managing an intern. So the same individual who beforehand had 6 bullet points that were, you know, technical and vague, and you know, the admissions committee receives it and their eyes glaze over and they go, oh, it's another software engineer. I can't make any sense of what like this actually does. I know it's like this technical software stuff. We have transformed that into a 5-bullet sequence here that makes it very clear what they do, gives the reader the ability to acclimate or like associate what they do with stores that the reader has probably been in themselves. That's in this yellow or first bullet. We have improved the construct or delivery within each bullet, each of these again. This one, and we have diversified, I'll go back to that in a second, and we have diversified the aggregate of themes or qualities or strengths or skills that exist between. They're not just technical anymore. There's tons now. If we had, you know, an extra half hour here and wanted to take these, we could dissect all of these bullet points against this map or this list in the back, and it's going to touch tons of different places on this list. So I think this is a great representative example of a before and after, and of where I'd want you to try to go. This one, you know, this one's interesting. It kind of leads with the impact. Enabled some sort of novel customer-facing technology in, you know, some other number of stores by understanding, here's the how, blank and blank, collaborating with blank and blank. Okay, so not as much like an explicit what, or the what is sort of inherent in here, but here's the impact. We're leading with the impact in this bullet. We know the number of stores. I mean, if there was some sort of revenue or revenue growth that you could, or new customers or something that you could trace to the implementation of this new technology, great, let's get that in there too. That's something we would talk about and try to tease out. And here in the how, they have 3 very distinct nodes: a listening or understanding node, or an intellectual curiosity node. They went out and they try to understand something, the blank and blank that are in here. They collaborated with some team in another country. There's international collaboration. And they had to present their findings or their recommendations or whatever, their idea to senior leaders. There's something senior facing and senior influence and communication and presentation related. Again, we're hitting a lot of the different topics that exist in that list in the back. These other two I mentioned, selected by managers or senior managers to lead most external communications and updates or presentations with product managers and other senior personnel. Because it's a software engineer, because they're going to be because the default bullet points that the person showed up with were so uniform and unidimensional, we wanted to look for more ways to diversify their skill set and the imprint we were leaving on the AdCom. I think a lot of times too, software engineers, I don't sound like I'm picking on but there's going to be associations for any job, for a person in any type of role. There are going to be stereotypes or associations made, and people are going to think software engineer, how are their communication skills? How are their collaboration skills? Have they done anything with any business facing teams? We wanted to intentionally season up, how are their communication skills if they're, software coding? We wanted to very intentionally seize an opportunity here to showcase this different. We wanted to play offense with this. Hey, I am a communicator. I am a good communicator. I was selected by my managers to lead communications for our teams. And in leading those communications, I worked alongside our product managers and our business strategists. And I presented to our CFO or our COO or our chief product officer, whatever that is, tease that out. And now we have a bullet. We have a mini story included with that. And then similar idea here. We want to show that you're not just sitting behind the computer coding. We want to show that you've managed and mentored a team member here, directed that person's, probably her work product, fostered soft skills in this case, coached her on other things, and completed her performance reviews, leading to, and maybe it led to that intern getting hired full time. We're leading to the creation of some sort of new training program that you helped build. And maybe that training program got scaled out to other offices. That would be impact. So you have, again, a what, how, impact, intentionally oriented around management and mentorship, personnel management, soft leadership, development of others here. And in aggregate, if you compare the before and after, this sounds somewhat self-aggrandizing, but this is the difference. This and versions of this in your essay and recommendations and elsewhere throughout your application are the difference between not getting in and getting in. These are a dime a dozen. People show up with lazy bullet points. People show up with technical bullet points that people can't understand. What did we do here? We diversified the array of skills, strengths, qualities that we're presenting. We've done it in a way that shows real impact and unpacks the how. We've done it in a way that's clear. I know it doesn't look clear because we pulled so many things out of this to anonymize them. Clarity and value are presented here, and diversified value. Let's see what else we can cover here. Let me peek at these questions too. There is a random question here about making up your resume. That's definitely not okay. Your resume has to be grounded in the reality and the accuracy of what you do and have done. But you could see here that just through language and not hyperbole, but just one verb instead of another, or one bullet structure instead of another, you're able to present things in a much stronger way. But definitely you cannot fabricate anything in these. What if something's confidential? That happens a lot in consulting. I think I deleted the example up above, but if something's confidential, you have to use stand-ins. A lot of times in consulting, things are confidential, and instead of saying the name of the client, you would say a top 5 U.S. consumer packaged goods company, or a Fortune 50 or Fortune 100 consumer packaged goods company. So there are definitely ways you could use ranges or approximations on dollar figures. There are definitely ways around that. Covered. Let's just see if we have. Let me give you two more little before and afters. Before and after. Okay, before, the person led the company's first pricing overhaul, streamlining pricing tiers and achieving targeted margin. What does that, it's almost hard to determine what that even means. It's very high level. How do we take that to the next level? Okay, good that it's led. Okay, leadership up front is the action verb. The front end of this is pretty similar. We have our what. We have our how. And we have our impact. We have some examples mixed in here. And of course, again, this should all be in the same font. Same idea here. The person helped raise, a few $1 million in Series A or B or C funding amid a challenging market environment. Okay, kind of a lazy bullet point. How can we unpack the value and the specifics of the underlying? How did you do that? What skills does it show? What do you mean by helped? Helped is kind of a, weak, not that helping somebody or helping your organization is a bad thing, but it's not the strongest front action verb. What if we lead? I also recall, if I recall, the dollar figure here was relatively small. It might have even been in the thousands or something. So we chose to express it in percentages instead. They boosted the fundraising valuation. So here we're actually, again, we saw an example of this above. We're leading with the impact. We've got the how. And very interesting, right? They largely did this through analysis and forecasting. So that shows analytical skill, perhaps novel analytical skill or an innovative application of those analyses. To develop a narrative that changed the investor's perception of the company from blank to blank. That's really cool. You didn't just use the analysis, you used it to storytell. You used it to create a narrative, and that narrative transformed something. It transformed investors' perception from A to B, and that helped boost the fundraising valuation or lead to this fundraise. Okay. Quantify your impact when you can, qualify it when you can't. We have a few examples of that. We've already kind of hit anywhere where I've talked about impact. You've got a little bit of that here. This is a very specific quantification of impact. This one's maybe a little more not super quantified, other than that it mentions the number of stores. These communications at the end here were distributed, if I recall, to other offices, to 10 other offices. I'm making up the number, but to 10 other offices around the country. Okay, that's somewhat quantified. It's also just, I would say, a qualified impact in that what you created or did has been scaled out elsewhere. So just look for those opportunities. Quantify where you can, qualify where you might not be able to. Okay, this is a very clear quantified impact, increasing gross margin by however many $1,000 in percents as well over several months. Put the numbers in there, boosting a fundraising valuation by a certain percentage, and you get the idea with impact. Okay, involvement. I've talked about this section. We'll wrap this up in the next few minutes here. Involvement. a lot of people, and this could be involvement, it could be leadership. All of this, of course, should be on one page. I'm just kind of getting down to the bottom of the page here because I'm doing all this text above it. Involvement could be leadership, could be community, if all of this stuff is going to be community related. Yikes. Okay, there we go. This is my preferred approach in here. And where would this go on a resume? Let's just delete. Let's delete some of these. So let's say, 2/3 of the way down your resume, we encounter your involvement section. Why have this on here? I mentioned it a little while ago. I'll reiterate it here. When you show up, when a resume is almost entirely professional, you're casting yourself in a potentially unidimensional light. Why not seize the opportunity using the resume as this front or cover page of your profile, something that can easily get kind of printed and passed around AdCom rooms? The first thing oftentimes a AdCom reader encounters, why not use that to show these other qualities? Why leave them off? Why bury them in a few words or a line at the bottom of the page? I like for people to seize this opportunity to share leadership, community, or involvement on the resume. There are a few schools I mentioned earlier that don't allow you any longer to put these type of activities in the application. So if they're not here, they're not going to see them. They don't exist. If they're not here and you don't write about them in an essay, the school is not going to see them or encounter them. So I like for people to think of what you've done outside of the office, extracurricularly in college, extra professionally since graduating college, organizations you've been involved in, things you've initiated or founded. I also would say here, think about what you've done beyond the scope of your immediate job at your company. And I'm okay with putting some of that stuff. I mean, you sort of have to make a choice. Does that go up in the experience section? But if it's distinct, like this person was selected to a leadership board of their company, yeah, that could go up in the experience. But here, we felt like it was getting greater attention if we actually pulled it out and called it, and put it in the involvement or the leadership section. So what did this person, just this hypothetical example, this person ended up with 4 strips here. I like to deliver them through 2-line strips on here, almost like keeping with this 2-line bullet mantra. In the application, in an activity section, you'd have an opportunity to show these again, show another side of these, elaborate on them if the text space in the application is longer than what you have here. But here we're choosing, I used the word hierarchy a moment ago, the ones that sort of rise to the fore, the ones that are the most interesting to highlight, the extras, the extra leadership, the extra involvement that you've had in your company, outside your company. Maybe you were on some CSR group or employee support group. It could touch your company, could be something, a nonprofit. You were an internship manager at your company. You were a class senator at your university. It's going to be different for everybody. Figure out what those 3 or 4 are. I probably the highest I've gone in this section is like 5 of these strips. If you're lower than 3, if you really don't have much involvement, then I would say get rid of this section and just lean into your professional experiences and build out your additional section, because we don't want to shine a light on the fact that you're very uninvolved or haven't been involved in a number of years. I go with this section as a default, and in most cases we can, but especially when people have ample involvement, or at least some threads we can pull on from college and post-college. If you have a lot from post-college, then just put the post-college ones here and put the college ones in education. These are some of the variables or different options you have. You could see we have your role, the name of the organization, the dates. Sometimes you could just do like years in here. You don't necessarily need the months. The months should go in the application, of course. Same idea with the what, how, impact formula in here. Where clarity and value, clarity and value, clarity and value. Again, when we pull back on this resume now, we can see we're creating an immediate leadership imprint, an immediate leadership visual, and showing all the different things this person has been involved in over the course of their academics and their career. Education section, a little bit more straightforward, I guess you could say. But again, all of this, of course, in the same font, of course, in the same font size. Oops. Make sure all the spaces, even the spaces between your headers should be all the same size as well. This looks like it has 2 spaces. If you were in a specific, the name of your university, and you were in the College of Arts and Sciences, you could put, it could go there. If that's too long, you could put it on, the next line, fit it in on the next line. Did you graduate in the top X of your class or magna cum laude? Did you have a certain GPA? Did you graduate first class? Any of these accolades? With something like GPA, you got to figure out, if your GPA is above the average for the school that you're applying to, you could probably put it on here. If it's below the average, maybe just leave it off and put it, let it be in the app. Other scholarships, honors programs, awards, any club leadership, any teaching assistantship, study abroad. Study abroad could be a bullet in here. Sometimes if the study abroad was significant enough, you could even make it its own. It would probably go below. You could make it its own, University of Florence, Italy or something. And you would say, spring 2015 or whenever this person would have gone, spring 2016. That takes up space. It makes it more visual. If it was substantial enough, maybe you were there for a year or you did a lot during that semester, you could have a bullet or 2 under it. You could break it out. Otherwise, I think study abroad is okay to go as a bullet here instead. And then at the bottom of the page, additional. So you say, wait a second, I had this involvement section or this leadership section here. And now, Greg, you're telling me to go additional here as well. Well, down here, you could kind of read this comment, but down here, I would like for you to have an additional repository of items. So that hierarchy logic, again, the things that are up in this leadership section, my leadership line lost its horizontal. Okay, now it came back, but you get the idea. The ones up in the leadership section are the ones that rise to the fore. You were more involved. You had more of a leadership role. You created more impact. They could be from college. Okay, class senator. Class senator could go down as a bullet over here. But this person, it was a pretty big part of what they did. It was a flagship leadership element that we want to call out. So that's why it's up in the leadership section. Down here, we would have other, maybe if you were just a member of a club or something a little bit more rudimentary, might get a one-liner in here, but you could see some of the different options. You could even see the comment. This comment is essentially what I just said. The previous section, leadership, might have already included 1 or 2 entries from your college extracurriculars. Any college activities that end up in that section should only qualify for that leadership section or if they are sufficiently unique, leadership-oriented, or impactful. Other college activities that are worth mentioning but are not strong enough for the previous section can go here. You were a member of a club but not a leader of that club. Keep same logic too with your essays. You could kind of take this, its natural conclusion would be if something's strong enough, is it strong enough to get called out here? If it's even stronger, it could be a paragraph in an essay or the centerpiece of an essay. So you're going through, you're playing that story, you're evaluating the worthiness and intrigue and leadership and impact of all of your different stories, not just on the resume, but throughout all the different elements of your MBA application. Finally, at the bottom, and again, this would be on one page, tightened down to one page. You could think of this additional section as a clean and easy to read additional repository of skills, interests, and memberships that you want to highlight on your resume, but aren't deserving enough for more comprehensive inclusion above. Could be technical, it could be skills. There is an art even to, the way that you show and what you show here. If you have a ton of international experience that's not already self-evident from like where you studied and where you worked, you could, you could have an international line on here. I probably would cap this out at like, I'd probably cap this out at like 5 categories. Internships is on here. Sometimes people with not much experience, or I think for most people, internships should not be up in the professional section. Sometimes if they're noteworthy enough, I say, let's put them down here as like a one-liner. That way the reader knows you did them. And if they are compelling enough, it adds a little bit of value. If somebody had a really, really low work experience or something, then maybe there's a rare case we would get an internship, or it was like a really robust internship, or maybe an internship you did for 2 years during college, or a co-op or something. You went to Northeastern University. Okay, that could probably go up top as a proper employment entry. But this is the idea here. Let me peek back for questions. I worked on a full-time contracts during my undergrad as developer. Okay, if somebody worked as this is almost exactly what I was just saying. If you had a full-time either internship or co-op or contract position during undergrad, then yeah, I think that probably could go up top. You just want to make sure, through the dates and such, that it's clear that you did that while you were an undergrad. When you go into the actual applications, you will typically not include that. Every school will ask you to calculate your years or months of work experience, and they'll want you to calculate it after you've graduated. So that would probably not get counted in that calculation. But if it's robust enough and you were 2 years as a full-time contract employee of some variety, I think that's probably robust. I'd want to see it, but I think that's robust enough to go up, toward the top here. And to format it the same way you would a job. A question on how to put academic qualifications without a table. I'm not sure I follow that. If there are any other questions just in the final minute or two here, certainly, happy to take them. If not, I will say we talked about one page, we talked about font size, we talked about sections. Spacing is something else. You could go to format here. I'm not sure if it'll show up, but you could control. So this is single spaced right now. You can toggle that. I probably end up usually somewhere between pure single spacing 1.0 and 1.1, maybe 1.05. If you go to format, paragraph, spacing, and then go line spacing, choose multiple, you can control the exact spacing of everything. So that is a walk through a resume and some different things to consider. Hopefully we got into the nitty gritty enough for you. I'll just close by thanking you for your time and reminding you to visit us at avantiprep.com, where you can check out our services, read our verified client testimonials, sign up for a free consultation. And again, we are running a 10% off everything from now through Friday, October 25th. email us, info@avantiprep.com with any questions. Visit our website. Use GMAT Club 10 at checkout. Thank you for your time and joining today. We hope to encounter you again on the on your journey into MBA application land. Sorry, my eye just caught one more question here. The query on one page still remains. Your example resume is well crafted, but it spills onto 2 pages. Okay, that was just an example. If we were to pull that back up, I had like before and after text in there. I was just kind of using that to demonstrate. You will, over the course of your reviews and your iterations, in fact, if we work with clients on multiple reviews of a resume, every review of that resume is longer than 1 page, except for the last one. We want to see more. We want to see the guts of what you did, and we'll shape that down and shave that down. The example we had up today, I was doing befores and afters and example bullets, and so I don't go by length on that. But even when you actually work on your real thing, it's going to spill longer. We're going to go a little long in order to go short and rein it down to 1 page. So thank you all again for your time. We hope to see you on your journey. Feel free to reach out if we can help in any way. Thank you and have a great day.